he wants me to take the proactive route of saying, I present myself to you as a living sacrifice, rather than him coming to me and saying, I want you to be a living sacrifice. And because that puts me then, well, oh, I suppose I better. Whereas if I'm saying to him, I choose to present myself to you as a living sacrifice so that you can prepare me, transform me, metamorphose me, do whatever you want to do in my life so I can be who you say I am. And the reality is I am that, but in my mind, I might not be.
Mine has to do with the dry times in the work. It's really hard for me to deal with when I feel like I'm drying up and I don't know what to do. And yesterday I was engaging the Lord. I'm like, why am I feeling so dry? What am I doing wrong? And last month I had the same experience, and he led me to a writing by Sadhu Singh, which said that sometimes he withdraws himself so you will see who you are without him, and then he pulls you back in. And then last night I was really concerned. I'm like, I can't understand why it doesn't feel like this fire is burning. And then I felt, if the fire continues to burn the way it was burning from the beginning, you won't be able to pour out to people. Because when the fire is burning like that, sometimes you don't even want to talk to anyone. So there are times when the fire has to come down so you are able to pour out, and then there are times when it has to come up. So I thought I'll mention it today. It's the strangest experience ever. And I know that if I was in the church age, this is when I'll be praying like crazy and doing all sorts of things. But I don't even feel like doing it, and I can't even reach anything. So I'm really struggling.
Well, I think there are seasons and times within our walk that are designed to prepare us for things to come. What I don't believe is that God ever withdraws from us. I do believe he engages us differently at different times and in different seasons. So sometimes he's like a fire, and sometimes he's like pouring rain. Sometimes he's like a waterfall, sometimes it's like a furnace. They have different purposes at different times in our lives. What we have to do is, in a sense, rest and don't strive when we're in those things. Cooperate, don't resist. So if you feel, okay, well, this appears to be dry, okay, I'm going to rest and cooperate with him in this season. Now, obviously, you can ask him, is there anything that I've done, or is there anything that's coming, hindering me, therefore I need to deal with that? But if it's a season where you need to go in the wilderness and you need to go through that preparation of the wilderness, he's still with you. He's just with you in a different way. It's like footprints in the sand. Oh, you left me. There was only one set of footprints. Yes, they were his. He was carrying you. So there are different times and seasons where God does different things. Now, sometimes there's a very specific purpose and reason, and that will become apparent as God reveals that, because he's a father to us. He doesn't want to harm us in any way. But sometimes us not knowing what he's doing is the purpose. So then we can trust him in not knowing. It's easy to trust when we know. When we don't know, it's not so easy. I've gone through seasons of that in my own life where, he's deliberately taken to show me where my trust level is, where my rest level is. So I can realize where I am on the journey. There's still more to be done. When everything is wonderful, you don't know where you are. because everything seems wonderful. But when everything isn't wonderful, it then gives you the opportunity of saying, maybe I don't actually trust him as much as I thought I did. Or maybe when I'm going through this, it's harder to rest in the situation because God hasn't changed. The situation requires rest, whether it's a mountaintop situation or a valley situation. Because when you go to the mountaintop and you can see and it's wow, it's amazing and everything's wonderful, that situation you need to rest in and enjoy and find joy in. When you go down into the valley, you still need to find rest and to find enjoyment and thanksgiving and gratitude, even in the different season and the different time. Because when we're in a refiner's fire and we're in a purifying season and God is revealing things and changing us and transforming us, that's in one sense sometimes difficult, but you're at least aware that that's what's happening. You know, it's hot. Things are really moving. But actually, when it doesn't seem like there's fire and it doesn't seem like there's water and it just seems like there's desert, what happens then? Well, he's still the source of the water. You know, he's with you in it, even though you don't feel it. And I believe that there are seasons that he knows that we need to prepare us for what's coming. And if everything was easy, what would we do when it gets hard? If we're not prepared for when it gets hard. Jesus was with them asleep when they were in the boat, when there was this huge storm. They were panicking. He was asleep. He was at rest. Why? Because he was resting in the fact that he was going to the other side. And he knew that he had a mission on the other side because he was intent in going there. The disciples heard him say, we're going to the other side, but they weren't resting in his words. They were looking at the circumstances. There's a wind, there's storms, we're not going to make it. Doesn't he care? Yeah, and then they started to question Jesus. Doesn't he care? He's asleep. You know, we're here panicking, life, you know, we could lose our lives, and he's asleep. Well, because he was resting in his word. They weren't resting in his word. So sometimes the test comes of whether we're going to rest in his word when everything doesn't look like his word. And that is something which will test how we're able to manage the circumstances and situations in that position, because then we'll be aware, I didn't handle that very well. I was not in rest. I struggled to find peace. I struggled to find joy because it didn't feel very joyful. And the thing is, it didn't feel very joyful. But is joy a feeling, or is joy a choice to embrace thanksgiving and gratitude when we don't feel there's anything to be thankful for? Because God's still the same God. He hasn't changed. It's just what's around us has changed. And then that does give us an opportunity of evaluating, how do I handle it when it doesn't feel like he's there? How do I handle it when it feels dry? How do I handle it? It feels like I'm in a wilderness. Well, when we then realize I didn't handle that too well, then we can learn from the situation. And then we don't get joy from the circumstances around us. We get joy from the intimacy of the knowledge of our relationship with him, which is the same whether we feel we're on a mountaintop or we feel we're in a valley. He hasn't changed. Just the circumstances around us have changed. And it isn't easy. You know, it's not easy. And, you know, I've gone through it and I question and I ask what's going on. And then when I don't get an answer, it's like, okay, I need to rest. Now I need to rest. When it first happened to me, it was like everything was like, why? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? You know, I don't understand. I need to understand. You need to tell me what's going on. You promised this, and and actually this wasn't what I was expecting. All the questions and all the things. That's my soul reacting to me not understanding, me not having all the facts, and actually having to trust God when I don't have all the facts and all the understanding and all the knowledge. Has he changed? No, he hasn't. What's changing is me, because I'm realizing I wasn't quite as I thought, and sometimes he just wants us to become aware so that we can find the joy and the peace, the love and the rest, even when the circumstances around us are either a desert and nothing seems to be happening, or a storm when everything seems to be happening. He's still the peace in the storm. He's still my place of rest. It's in him. So I need to be in him when I'm on the mountaintop. I need to be in him when I'm in the valley. I need to be in him when I'm in the fire. I need to be in him when I'm in the water. It's all his presence, just they're expressed in different ways. So it's nothing to worry about or be concerned about, other than if we don't adapt and learn from it, then the next time we'll have to go through it again. It's like we'll go around the mountain until we learn, they went around the mountain, they went around the wilderness for 40 years because they didn't learn, until eventually all of them came from a different new perspective. But I know it's not easy. But the testimony of the mountaintop experiences can help you in the valley situation, because you can live in the joy of what you have experienced and the testimony that you have, rather than having to face the situation from no testimony and no past and no record. So I can thank God because he is good, because I have a testimony of his goodness.
Right.
Always, regardless of whether I think I'm feeling his goodness or experiencing his goodness, he's still good. The trust in the Father, who is good and wants the best for you, is if I'm in this season, and in this season I don't understand and he's not telling me, then I've got to trust that is what is important to be able to rest in right now. So I rest in his goodness and in his love, in joy and peace, in the midst of the storm, so I can live in the eye of the hurricane, if you like.
Wow.
Or I can live in a dry place because I have water within to drink from. Sometimes we're looking at the externals of our source of supply when the internal is where our source of supply is. He's in me. He is a source of living water. Rivers are flowing. A fountain is there. I can drink from inner sources and inner wells, even when it doesn't appear to be any water around me from the external, because the inner never dries up and never runs dry. So I turn inwards to draw from the source of supply, which is in me, when I'm facing deserts around me.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I think what actually makes it worse is I'm going to Ghana in November, and everyone is asking, are you going to do a conference? Are you going to do, and I'm not getting anything from him. And I don't know. I just want to go and be with my mom, who is going blind now.
Yeah.
So that's my main focus. Am I going to do a conference? I don't know. And I keep saying,
well,
I'm not hearing.
If he's not saying anything, then don't do anything.
Okay.
Maybe he just wants you to go and spend time with your mum without all the distractions of other people and other things. And that's why he's not telling you to do anything different. If he doesn't tell you to do anything different, remain where you are. Don't get presumptuous about, and people will pressure you all the time because they want this, they want that, they want the other. Whereas actually, maybe God's focus in this is spend the time with your mum, because that's actually the precious thing that you need right now. And I think people, don't be pressured by people and people's expectations of you. And the best thing to say is, God hasn't told me to do a conference. I'm actually going to focus on the time with my mum. If anything changes, I'll let you know. Then you then stop people asking the question all the time, which can put pressure on you. You can feel like, well, I need God, tell me if I'm supposed to do a conference. Well, if he hadn't told you, then you're not supposed to do one. Just leave it at that. I get that quite often. And sometimes I jump into something thinking, well, I know this is the right thing. And I know it's a good thing. So that's okay. And then sometimes afterwards, God sort of says, well, you didn't really ask me. You assumed. And actually there's a situation right now where I've agreed to do something that I really shouldn't agree to do. Now I've got to go back and say, I can't do it because I actually didn't really check it out properly, because I know it's in line with the things that I can do and that God has wanted me to do in the past. But actually in this situation, I really didn't take the time to seek whether this was the right thing to do. And then God asked me to do something else and opened the door for something else. And I said, well, I can't do that because I'm doing this. And he says, well, yeah, but you shouldn't be doing that. I'm like, okay. So now I'm in this difficult place. So you're wanting me to do this, and I've said, yes, I'll do that. So I've got to go back and say, sorry, I made a mistake. I shouldn't really have accepted that, because actually, I wasn't asking God clearly enough at the time, because I just assumed I've done this before 3 times. I'm going to do this the 4th time. And actually now God is sort of wanting me to do something else. I'm like, oh, I'm in a hard place. I have to let people down, or I'm going to have to let God down. Well, push comes to shove, I'm just going to have to say, look, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have jumped into this. No, it isn't at the stage where, anyone's going to be really put out about it. But, I don't like saying yes and then having to turn around and say no. But I'm going to have to, because I shouldn't have said yes in the first place. But sometimes we learn. Next time when it comes to an invitation and I don't get an instant, yeah, that's okay, then I'm going to have to say, well, I'm going to have to wait and find out. I'll let you know. But it's a learning process. And I never want to be doing something that God doesn't want me to do. I only want to be following his heart. It's hard when the things that follow his heart are offered to you, but you're not supposed to do it. It's not that it isn't supposed to happen. It's just you're not supposed to be involved. I wasn't supposed to be involved, but I said I would be. So now I've got to go back and say, sorry, I can't. Which is, not very nice when you have to go back and say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. But so better to not say yes in the first place. And then if God does give you the go ahead to do something, then you can say, okay, I'll do it. But, you should never be pressured to do conferences just because people want you to. It sounds to me like this is a really good opportunity for you to spend time with your mum, which is a priority. Really.
I have been different times in my life struggling with this. What does surrender mean? What does being a living sacrifice mean? Thinking of, we have a very good Father. He doesn't want to force us to do things. Okay, I surrender to you. I do everything you want. If I say that to God,
yeah.
I need to trust that he only wants good things for me, right? So, but that's not always so easy. And also, I think many times in different churches, I have felt that it's kind of this way of talking about surrendering, being a living sacrifice, being committed, has in one way maybe been used to manipulate people to do what the church wants you to do, what the pastor wants you to do. So it's been not very clearly, but I felt like that. Maybe I haven't felt the right thing, I'm not sure. But I have felt like that. And so that has been a problem for me then, to think, oh, surrender. I will be a living sacrifice. Well, is that the right, in what way is that the right relationship with my Father?
Okay.
I mean, he's my Father. He is not my slave. He's not my slave.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Could you explain?
I think you've got to separate the relational and the journey, because surrender we tend to think of as our hands up, someone's pointing a gun at me, I surrender. That isn't what surrender means from a perspective of God. It's basically saying, I trust you, therefore I'm not going to do anything in opposition or resist anything you want to do in my life, because I trust that what you're going to do is good, even though it doesn't look like that to me. So it's an attitude. And there may be a general attitude of, hey, I'm surrendered to God because I just want whatever he wants. And then there's a specific when he asks me to do something in a specific time, in a specific moment, where I get the opportunity of saying yes. So generally, I can say, yeah, I'm surrendered to whatever God wants in my life. But then when he asks something specific, I've then got to make the choice at that moment to say yes to that. Being a living sacrifice is an illustration of the process of transformation. So a living sacrifice is, I give my life to you with the expectation that you are going to transform me, because I am allowing you and giving you that permission. So I am choosing, I'm not being forced to go on an altar against my will. I am choosing to be this living sacrifice, so you, my high priest, can prepare me the sacrifice, because you're going to transform my life so that I am more and more aware of who you say I am. So there's a renewing of the mind in that process. That process will bring me to a place where God may want to deal with my thinking. He might want to deal with my emotions. He might want to deal with the things I do on a daily basis. So I'm giving him permission. Then I've got to trust the way he uses that permission is his choice. I can't dictate to the high priest how he's going to prepare me as a living sacrifice. That's where the trust comes in. I can't say to him, right, I'm a living sacrifice, God, if you do it this way, or if you don't do it that way. I just have to trust him and present myself, because that's what it sort of says. Present yourself as a living sacrifice. So it's me saying to him, I'm here, I'm available for you to do whatever you want. He's not trying to force me into it. He wants me to take the proactive route of saying, I present myself to you as a living sacrifice, rather than him coming to me and saying, I want you to be a living sacrifice. And because that puts me then, well, I suppose I better. Whereas if I'm saying to him, I choose to present myself to you as a living sacrifice so that you can prepare me, transform me, metamorphose me, do whatever you want to do in my life so I can be who you say I am. And the reality is I am that, but in my mind, I might not be. So I am who he says I am, but I might not be fully aware of who he says I am. So that's the journey in the process. So in a sense, it all does come down to trust. Do I trust he's good? Do I trust that he wants the best for me? Yes, I do. And as a result of me trusting him, I choose to surrender to whatever process he wants me to go through or whatever he wants me to do. See, a living sacrifice is a process of transformation. Surrendering to only do what I see him doing or to the revelation of his heart can be a positive thing in terms of me saying, yes, I will do this, or I will do that, or I will do whatever I see you doing. Which is slightly different from the living sacrifice thing, which is, I know you're going to change and transform me, so I am giving you the right and permission to do it.
Okay. Okay, I see the difference now.
Yeah, but, I agree, in church situations, it's very easy for people to preach, be a living sacrifice, and then present it as if they have to surrender to the church. Well, no, you don't. You're only responsible to do what you see the Father doing, not what they tell you the Father's doing or what they tell you should be doing. And there's always pressure using the Bible and using Bible verses to try and convince you that this is what you should be doing. And ultimately, it's a daily relationship with Father who will reveal anything he wants you to be involved in. And if he doesn't, then you don't have to be involved in anything. And is constantly looking to bring that change and transformation in our lives so that we fully realize who we really are. And we've lived a long time, most of us, with a whole load of junk in our mind, which is the opposite of who we really are. Whether that be ways of thinking or ways of feeling or memories of the past where things have happened which don't seem to line up with the best things, generally because of other people. But the process will bring us to the place where we begin to see in his face a reflection of who we really are. And we can't see it anywhere else. It's only in his mirror that we can truly see ourselves. If we're looking in the world as a mirror, we'll see a reflection of how the world sees us or other people see us. So it's how God sees us that's really, really important. And it's a positive thing. Surrender is seen as a negative word in general terms because, I've lost, or I give up, or, or I've been defeated, so I better surrender. Whereas with God, it's more us choosing to align ourselves with the things that he shows us. So it's a very positive thing of us just choosing to align ourselves with him. There is he hadn't got a gun on us and he's not forcing us. And there are no consequences from, if you don't surrender, you're going to be shot. It's process. And if in this situation, I might find it difficult to surrender perhaps, or I might find it difficult to say yes to something when I don't feel that I'm equipped to do it. But if he asks me to do it, then the equipping will come. And it might be that equipping will take a process. And then I'll have to go through a living sacrifice process to be able to be equipped.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not always the time, it's not always instant. When I say yes to God, it might be yes, do something now, but most of the time it's yes, and now you're going on a journey so you can do it. It's never going to basically want you to do something that you can't do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about where I am, I mean, because the situation where I am at the moment, it's not really, humanly speaking, a very good situation to be in. But I feel I need to be here in this situation for God to be that kind of living sacrifice for God to be able to change me. Because I won't let him do it if I'm not forced to. So it's like I have to need him so much in order to allow him to do it. Because if I don't need him, I just tend to go off on my own, living my life without him. So because I need him very much, I
think
do.
it's desire, isn't it? It's the desire.
Yeah.
For him more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
But that desire can be outworked in lots of different ways, and I can express my desire through my intention, and that's often what I choose to do. It isn't like, oh, wonderful, everything's wonderful. And sometimes it's like, well, no, I have to choose when things don't seem to be as wonderful. And I have to choose, but desire for me is stimulated by testimony. So my experiences stimulate my future desire for more. I don't rest on my laurels and say, oh, that was wonderful. I can live off that now forever. Because actually, I know there's no end to the increase of his government and peace. I know there is way, way more out there to be restored. So I want to be part of that journey and that process. So my desire is stimulated by my previous experiences that say, this is just the beginning, not the end.
That sometimes you feel dry, but I think, like you have just answered, it's a waiting game, it's a patience game, because you just, every day, I think that's how you feel. I think it's because we are people who are used to all sorts of stimulation, for lack of a better word. And so when we start this journey with God, we get to a point of probably ecstasy, I should say. And we want to be there all the time. And then when it's not happening like that, we feel very lost. And I am also learning that it's not always like that, because then without you even knowing or sensing it, he shows up, he reveals something, or you speak, or you start to speak in a meeting like this with infused knowledge, and you're thinking, oh, I thought that I'm far away from God, and you realize, he's working, he's doing something. And so I think I'm learning that you just have to be patient, but to exercise patience, which is hard. But we are an instant generation where we need something and we want it now.
Yeah, we do live in that sort of instant gratification, information, and everything is available pretty much whenever you need it. And with God, that isn't the case. God isn't the internet, and God is not a search engine that's just going to come up with a whole lot of answers. God wants relationship, and it's through relationship that he brings about the changes and transformation that's needed. And sometimes it is tough. I mean, think of Joseph. Is this guy had this amazing vision and dream, and God called him, and then he finds himself betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, lied about, put into prison, forgotten about, and all of that. But when the opportunity came, the process had changed him. And then he was able then to fulfill the purpose of God. But he went on a long, winding, twisty journey of almost like, well, this is completely the opposite of what I thought was supposed to happen in my life. But eventually, the reality came about. And patience is not easy when things seem to be opposing or opposite to what you feel is what God has shown you. But I think a story like Joseph shows that you can't take the journey. You got to look at the journey is getting me to a position where that can be outworked, and the journey may be difficult, and the journey will be to places which will get me ready for the journey. So Joseph had to deal with his youth and his rash and his attitude probably, and his character, and all of those things that are needed when we get into situations where we got to be godly, and patiently allowing the process to outwork is not the easiest thing from our cultural perspective. But when you look at life, Jesus didn't come on into ministry at 12. He may have been revealed in the temple at 12, but he didn't go and start doing all the miracles and public ministry. He had another 18 years of waiting for that. That's a lot of patience needed when you can change the world. But he waited for the right time, and that was a prophetic time, effectively. There were a series of years from the temple being restored in the 770s and all of that stuff, which brought them to a point in history. And then he was able to then come into a public phase when the time was right. Would they have listened to him as a 12-year-old? Probably not. They didn't listen to him as a 30-year-old, did they? So they would have never respected a boy. So he waited until he matured, and he grew, it says, in stature, in wisdom with God and man. So he grew up physically, but he also grew up in wisdom. So he learned wisdom on the process. And a lot of us have a lot of knowledge, but not as much wisdom to use the knowledge right. And I think wisdom is what you get on the journey. I don't think wisdom is necessarily something you just get downloaded. Information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, I think, come out in the process.
That's so true.
Right.
Yeah, the waiting game is a hard one. It's very hard. And I was just thinking about it as Peter was saying, that this is we really need patience, because if we are professing that we're going to be here forever, it's a long time for everything that is going to do and for everything that we have to do along the journey, where we think we are not walking with him and we think we are walking with him. It's going to really need a lot of patience. I'm learning every time I am in a group or like this, in a mentoring session, in a group session. I am learning that patience is the key, because you talk. Why today you have toothache and you're saying, I'm going to live forever, and you think about it and you think, somebody died because of a toothache. I could die. And you're thinking, how can I die? I am professing to live forever. And then tomorrow you have this, and tomorrow you have that. And next you start to go back to say, well, it's a process, and you have to learn in the experience what is going on, what is doing. And most of the things we haven't learned it from him. Really, is what we have learned while we were in the cages, and we need to unlearn a lot of things as we are learning his new ways of restoration.
Yeah, and and it's true. Patience in light of a week or a month or even a year is one thing, but patience in light of immortality is another thing altogether. And I wonder, are people even thinking about the being here in another 1,000 years and what that 1,000 years would entail?
It would look like, yes, what does that mean? I think about it like that, and I'm thinking, wow.
And, you know,
I think
1,000 years of sort of life is one thing, but 1,000 years of, I don't know, living in a cave or something, how would you fancy that? You know, and a lot of people will be like, oh, no, I don't really think this immortality thing is quite up to scratch, you know, because we've got this perspective that it's going to be 1,000 years of the best it can be here now. Well, I heard of Chris Reed, who's the guy who now runs Morning Star Ministries, had a vision or a dream of meeting John, the Apostle John, in a cave, and he was still alive. And the Apostle John said that he's going to become publicly known again. So it's like, okay, well, how would you like to be in a cave for the last 2,000 years? That requires a fair degree of patience.
It does, doesn't it?
You know, and I think we just got to, you know, and I'm not saying God wants us to be in a cave at all, but what I'm saying is we can't put dictates onto the process or the journey. We can't say, well, I'll be immortal if I can live in luxury for the next 1,000 years. It's like, who knows what the next 1,000 years is going to bring in terms of restoration and everything else. So it's an interesting question to ask. You know, are you actually prepared for 1,000 years or 10,000 years or 20,000 years or whatever?
Or eternal, because I used to think that how am I going to be in heaven for eternity? I thought to myself, I was being real, and I thought to myself, I don't know whether I'm going to like it or not. I was questioning, I'm going to be in heaven for eternity. Doing what? You know?
Yeah, I think some
now
people...
I've got a better understanding that there is going to be a lot of doing and a lot of learning the ways of God, because He is so big for us. And every time we learn something, there's something to learn.
Absolutely true.
So my thing is that I just have to learn to be patient. And now I don't stress over things anymore, because I have set my mind to say, I'm going to be here for a long time. So whatever time it's going to take is going to happen, because a long time is not going to be a long... If I'm going to be here a long time, I need to be having stuff to do.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And I think a lot of people haven't thought about the implications of immortality and really contemplated what it actually means or might mean, you know, and the time scale of how long things could take. Because I think people still have this revival mentality. Oh, God will flip a switch and everything will be fine. You know, well, it might not be that way. You know, I mean, if John has lived in a cave for the last 1,900 years or more, what do you think he's been doing? I mean, you know, has he been on his own in a cave for 1,900 years? Well, he may have been able to because he was obviously able to access heaven. So he may have been doing other things spiritually whilst in the cave, but physically, you know, would you fancy living in a cave on your own for 2,000 years?
Come on now.
Well, you know, if you were transcending the heavens and doing all sorts of stuff, and therefore, you know, your physical thing was not the important route, well, maybe. But, you know, most people would not, you know, they would not sort of look forward to that type of dynamic. You know, now I didn't get the details of what he looked like or what he might have looked like, and has he got long hair going down to, you know, 25 feet long? I don't know. I doubt it. You know,
It's fun though.
yeah. But it's interesting, just the concept of what would it be. And I know, you know, Sundar Singh, who wrote about the Maharishi of Kalesh or whatever. Well, that guy was up in the cave on, you know, up in the mountains for a long time, praying. You know, that was what he was doing, interceding and doing something like that. But he obviously had to be able to live in that sense of on his own with God. You know, I'm not saying that that's what immortality will look like, because I don't think it necessarily will. But if it does, you know, who would want it? I think some people will be like, "No, take me to heaven now." You know, I can't look forward to that. You know, but it's just, you know, I think being open to, don't just embrace the concept without giving it some thought and being ready for whatever it might be. You know. Anyway, Tish, you got your hand up there.
Yeah, that's been my trouble as well. I'm like, oh my goodness. I honestly don't want to live in a cave. But I also don't want to live in cities. I don't want to be amongst people anymore. As it is now, I wish I could go and live in a village somewhere, but we don't know how it's going to look like. And I struggle to talk about it because I'm like, okay, I don't know. Father knows. It will be fun. If there are more people and we are able to communicate somehow spiritually and ascend and descend and do things, it will be a beautiful community of long living 1,000 years fathers living in different parts of the world and being able to commune in the spirit. It will be fun if there are more people, but if you're alone, no.
But you're never alone. And I think that's the thing. If God did call us to something like that, then he would equip us to be able to live in rest and joy and find peace in it all. And sometimes we look at it and think, oh no, I couldn't do that, because we're looking at it from our present perspective, rather than, you know, the future perspective that God would be with us in that.
Yeah.
You know, and if John is doing that, I'm sure he's not in the cave all the time in the spirit. I'm sure he is engaged in activity and probably has the Father's heart on lots of different things. But, you know, it's interesting questions, aren't they, to sort of ponder and think, ooh, am I prepared for anything? Or would I only want to live forever in certain scenarios where I'm comfortable? Yeah. To what my understanding of comfort is, of course.
Exactly. I'm sure sometimes he is bewildered at what we are doing on the earth, and sometimes he will be excited at his own experiences and exposures, and I'm sure he's going through times like we are doing, dry times, stormy times, rainy seasons and all that. But good for him. He's a great guy. But the next question I wanted to ask is, again, if you have to travel to places, for me, this is not a strange place. It's my hometown, yet there's a lot coming at me. What do you do? How do you clear the space for yourself?
What, in terms of preparation for travel?
Preparation spiritually for travel.
Well, that depending on what I don't separate up any sort of travel for vacations or whatever. It's just for me, here's an opportunity to enjoy being somewhere else, doing something different. So I wouldn't do anything different if I was going to do a conference in a country as if I was going to go and have a holiday in that country. I would be looking to prepare the way, so making sure there are no blockages, hindrances, opposition. So I would be my thinking would be, and my choosing the reality is everything is going to go smoothly. If it doesn't go smoothly, I'm going to change it so it does go smoothly. So I'm going to see, I am in charge of this. I'm not subject to circumstances. And I mean, coming back from Turkey, we had an hour before our bus left the bus station in Heathrow to come down to Taunton. And an hour, okay, well, that's tight, but I'm sure I was going to get the bus no matter what. That was my attitude. I will get that bus. I booked that ticket. I will get the bus. I won't miss it, because the next bus was like 5 hours later. So, so then we were delayed in taking off. There was a problem getting on the plane. Then there was a problem taking off. And then there was a problem getting a slot at the other end. And eventually we got off the plane with 15 minutes before the bus was going. But I was still, okay, yes, I might need to get my skates on here and walk fast, but I'm going to catch that bus. So I had to get through passport control. Well, we were the first ones to the passport gate, and we walked straight through. Then we got to a lift, and it was a huge queue for a lift to get back onto the other level, and there wasn't stairs. So I just thought, oh, okay. So I walked right at the front of the queue and said, we're going to miss our bus if we don't get in first. Is it okay if we get in first? And they said, yeah, okay. Yeah. So I was proactive. I didn't just sit there. And then we got there, and we got there in time for the bus. And then the bus was delayed anyway. So we wouldn't have missed it, irrespective. So I caught the bus, but it was all I didn't fear. I didn't panic. I didn't worry. Didn't get anxious. I just chose, I'm going to catch that bus, and therefore things worked out to catch the bus. Now, I've never, ever gotten off a plane and got to the bus station within 15 minutes. I mean, it's quite a long way, even from the thing to walk. Now, I don't know whether time did anything, but I know I chose that reality. And it wasn't just me, it was two of us. So, we got there and everything was fine, And I think sometimes you just got to be in the mindset of this travel. I am going to legislate for the smooth function of this travel. I send out angels ahead of me. I do things. I don't just sort of passively sit back. I'm positive, I'm proactive. And I have a positive attitude towards everything, so that everything for me is going to think. And therefore, when you're traveling up to an airport, it's like, no, there's going to be no obstructions on the roads. I'm not going to be pushed for time. I'm going to get there on time. Everything's going to be fine. The flight's going to go smoothly. I'm going to have a good seat. The movie is going to be great. I have a positive attitude towards it, and I think sometimes, that's what we have to learn to apply. And in travel situations, I've done a lot of traveling, and there have been situations where I had to take authority in the situation and make sure a plane was going to be on time, I wasn't going to miss a connection, various things like that. That I don't allow fear to dominate or control, but I'm also preparing ahead of time. So I'm not just turning up on the day with, oh, I hope everything's okay today. I don't hope anything's going to be okay. I choose everything will be okay ahead of time to make sure that I'm in the right framework and I've chosen the reality that can begin to manifest. And I think sometimes, you just got to be prepared, ahead of time. If I'm going to do a conference, then I would do other things, in that I would, open my spirit around the place. I would go and surround it. I would go and visit it in the spirit. I would go and engage it for the atmosphere. I would choose to create the atmosphere. I would choose to begin to bring the rule of God into the space where I am going to. A holiday, generally it's more along the lines of, I'm going to enjoy this and have a really good time. It's not going to rain, I'm not going to, have any issues along the way. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to go smooth. This is going to be a time of rest. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to see nice things, meet nice people. If you've got anything for me to do, then I'm open for that. But I don't go looking for stuff when I'm on holiday, but I do leave a deposit of me in a place. When I'm in a place, the memory of me in the place is a deposit in the land for the blessing of the land I'm in. So that's how I also see it. Even when I'm on holiday and enjoying the sights or whatever I'm doing, I'm still aware that I am in that place as a son of God, and I am a positive sort of person and a positive presence and frequency for that place, and therefore I'm going to deposit my frequency there to keep on resonating, and I want to cooperate with God's purposes for a place. So ultimately the restoration of that place will take place. And when you go to a country like Turkey, that was where all of these churches were in the 1st century, and then you find now it's a Muslim country, maybe sort of a sectary Muslim country, but it's still a Muslim country, then, you've got to say, okay, restoration will bring it back to God's original purpose, which those churches didn't fulfill, obviously. Otherwise they'd still be there, and they're not. So ultimately, there's all sorts of ways of looking at there, being a blessing to people, being a blessing to tour guides, being a blessing, not getting annoyed or angry with people or frustrated with people, but being a blessing to them by bringing a sort of place of peace, so that people around you can also feel there's something here of calm, and they don't have to feel, stressed, because stressed people can stress other people, and there were only a couple of occasions where the odd person got a bit stressed, but we just calm it down, just bring an attitude and an atmosphere of peace into the situation.